The Galactic Council chamber stretched into impossible heights, its curved walls alive with shifting constellations that represented each member civilization. 12,000 delegates from 900 worlds filled the tiers of observation galleries, their collective gaze fixed on the circular floor below. At the center stood a single human. Ambassador Kalen Vance wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, dark fabric with silver threading along the shoulders, his insignia bearing the blue and green orb of home. He was shorter than most delegates, his frame unremarkable among the towering Zalari and the multi-limbed Quarren. But his eyes held a stillness that made the observation galleries shift in their seats. The presiding officer, a Cirith named Valthar, raised a crystalline staff. His species communicated through harmonic frequencies, but he had adapted a translator for this occasion. The Council has rendered its final judgment. By unanimous vote, the species designated humanity is hereby exiled beyond the galactic rim. All territories claimed by Earth are forfeit. All military assets are to be decommissioned or surrendered. You have 72 cycles to evacuate your colonies. Vance did not blink. He had heard the verdict hours before, through diplomatic channels. He had already transmitted the evacuation orders to Earth Command. What the Council did not know was that those orders had been drafted months ago, anticipating this very outcome. Ambassador Vance, Valthar continued, his tone carrying the condescension of a predator addressing prey, do you have anything to say before we conclude this session? Vance stepped forward. His boots made no sound on the polished floor, but the silence in the chamber deepened. 12,000 delegates leaned forward, anticipating tears, pleas, or rage. Humans were known for their emotional outbursts, their desperate clinging to survival. What they got was worse. When I was a child, Vance began, his voice carrying through the chamber's acoustics without amplification, my father told me a story. He said that before humans knew the stars, we looked up and wondered if we were alone. We hoped we would find friends. We feared we would find monsters. He paused, letting the words settle. Instead, we found you. A ripple of murmurs passed through the galleries. The Cirith delegate, a 3-meter-tall being with segmented eyes, rose to object. You dare insult this body. I'm not insulting you, Vance cut him off. I'm expressing disappointment. You see, we expected your kind to be wise, ancient. Your civilizations predate ours by thousands of years. Your technology surpassed ours when we were still painting on cave walls. He turned slowly, making eye contact with as many delegates as he could. Each one flinched under his gaze. And yet here you are, afraid. The chamber erupted. Chairs scraped across observation platforms. Translators stuttered through overlapping protests. Valthar slammed his staff 3 times, generating a concussive pulse that forced silence. You have no right, Valthar hissed, his harmonic voice cracking, to lecture us on fear. Your species has expanded across 300 systems in 2 centuries. You modify your own genetics. You weaponize your own biology. You cannot be trusted. Vance nodded slowly. All true, we are aggressive, we are adaptable, we are relentless, but you know what else we are. He pulled a small device from his pocket, a data slate with a single file. He placed it on the floor at his feet. We're the ones who built your ancestors. The silence that followed was absolute. No murmurs, no shifting, just 12,000 beings frozen in confusion. You have records, Vance continued, of a race you call the Architects, beings who seeded your worlds with life, who gave you the building blocks of intelligence. You worship them. You built monuments to them. He pointed to the data slate. That file contains DNA sequences from every member species in this chamber, and every single one shares a common marker, a genetic sequence that does not appear anywhere else in the galaxy, a sequence that we call the human marker. Valthar's staff trembled. That's impossible, the Architects predate. Your history, Vance finished. Your history is wrong. The architects weren't an alien race. They were us. Humanity. Millions of years ago, our ancestors spread across the galaxy, seeded your worlds, and then retreated. They left you to evolve, to grow, to become something worthy of their legacy. His voice hardened. And what did you become? You became xenophobic, paranoid. You conquered lesser species, enslaved them, and called it expansion. You created a council that exists to maintain the status quo, to ensure no new power ever challenges your supremacy. He gestured at the chamber around him. And when you found a species that reminded you of your own origins, a species that refused to bow, that refused to stagnate, you called us dangerous. You called us unstable, and now you're exiling us. Valther's voice dropped to barely a whisper. You're lying. This is a desperation tactic. Vance smiled, a tight, cold expression that had no warmth behind it. Check the file. Verify it. You'll find the data matches. You'll find the genetic sequences are identical to those found in your own archaeological digs, the ones you sealed away because they didn't fit your narrative. He turned to walk away, then paused at the edge of the chamber floor. You're not exiling us because we're a threat. You're exiling us because we remind you of what you could have been, and that terrifies you more than any weapon we could build. He stepped off the floor and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. As the doors closed behind him, Valther whispered to his aides, "Get that file, verify it now." But in his heart, he already knew the truth. He had seen those genetic markers. He had locked them away himself. The humans had come from somewhere, somewhere older than memory. Somewhere that was about to wake up. Commander Alara Vance stood on the observation deck of the Redeemer, watching her home shrink to a pinprick of light. Behind her, the Exodus fleet stretched across the void, 273 ships carrying 5 million souls. Colony vessels, military escorts, repurposed cargo haulers. Everything Earth could scrape together in 72 cycles. 4 months had passed since the Council's verdict. 4 months of hard burns through uncharted space, rationing food and water, losing ships to mechanical failures and navigation errors. 20,000 people had already died. 20,000 more would follow if they didn't find a habitable world soon. "Commander," a voice crackled from the speaker, "Lieutenant Park, her tactical officer. We're picking up something on long-range scanners." Alara turned from the viewport. "Define something." "I don't know how to define it, ma'am. It's massive, and it's stationary." She crossed the deck to the command console, pulling up the sensor data. Her eyes widened. The object was 2 light minutes away, drifting in the void between star systems. It was roughly the size of a gas giant, but its shape was angular, geometric, too deliberate to be natural. Scans showed no energy signatures, no heat emissions, no radiation. It was cold as space itself. But it was there, and it had no right to be. "All ships hold position," Alara ordered, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. "Tactical, prepare a reconnaissance team. I want full scans before anyone gets close." "Ma'am, that thing is huge. If it's a Council weapon." "It's not Council," she cut him off. "The Council doesn't build things they can't move. That structure is older than their entire civilization." She knew she was right. The geometric patterns on its surface were too familiar. She had seen them before, in Earth's oldest archaeological sites, in the ruins beneath Antarctica, in the records her father had smuggled out before the verdict. The architects. Except they weren't architects. They were humans, and this was their legacy. The shuttle Perseverance descended through the structure's outer shell, passing through a gap that was exactly the right size for a human ship. Alara noted that detail with a sinking feeling. The architects had known their descendants would come. They had left a door. Inside, the structure was hollow. A massive cavern stretched for kilometers in every direction, its walls lined with machinery that hummed with dormant power. The shuttle's lights illuminated pillars carved with symbols that matched Earth's oldest languages. "There's gravity," Lieutenant Park noted, checking his instruments. "Artificial gravity and atmospheric readings, breathable, perfectly balanced." Alara nodded. "They designed it for us." They landed on a platform near the center of the cavern. As the shuttle's ramp lowered, Alara stepped out onto a surface that felt like smooth stone but hummed with barely perceptible vibrations. She walked toward a control console, a simple pillar with a handprint indent. Her father had prepared her for this. He had given her the codes, the genetic keys, the access protocols. He had known the Council would exile them. He had known they would be forced to seek shelter among the ruins of their ancestors. "All right," she said, pressing her hand into the indent. "Let's see what you left us." The cavern exploded with light. Holographic displays flickered to life across every surface, showing star charts, planetary maps, technical schematics. A voice, ancient, calm, synthesized, filled the space. "Welcome, inheritors. Your ancestors have been waiting for you." Alara's crew gasped. Some dropped to their knees. She stood frozen, staring at the holographic figure that materialized before her, a human woman, dressed in flowing robes, her features androgynous but unmistakably human. "Who are you?" Alara managed. "I am Sentinel," the figure replied. "A digital consciousness designed to preserve the legacy of the Foundation. You have activated me with your genetic signature. You are confirmed as descendants of the original human colony." Alara's throat tightened. "Original colony? Humanity didn't. We evolved on Earth. We have fossil records." "Your fossil records are incomplete." Sentinel's voice carried no emotion, only facts. "Humanity originated on Earth, yes, but not the Earth you know. The original humans were seeded there by their own ancestors, a civilization that flourished millions of years ago, that spread across the galaxy, that created the species you now call the Council races." She paused, allowing the information to sink in. "When the experiments grew violent," Sentinel continued, "the Foundation withdrew. We sealed ourselves in dimensional pockets, waiting for our descendants to evolve to a point where they could inherit our knowledge. But we did not leave you defenseless." The holographic displays shifted, showing schematics of ships, weapons, energy sources. "We left keys, seeds, technology disguised as myth, and we left a failsafe." Alara felt her heart hammering against her ribs. "What kind of failsafe?" Sentinel's holographic eyes met hers. "The Council has exiled you because they are afraid of your potential, but they do not understand the source of that potential. They believe you are a dangerous mutation. In truth, you are a return to form." The displays shifted again, showing the structure around them in its full glory. Not a ruin, not a derelict relic, but a ship. A vessel the size of a moon, powered by a dimensional drive that could fold space itself. "You are not exiled," Sentinel said. "You are summoned. The Foundation is ready to wake up, and you, Commander, are the one who will wake it." Alara stared at the schematics, at the impossible technology, at the fleet of warships waiting in the structure's belly. She thought of her father, standing alone in that council chamber, delivering his warning. She understood now. The warning wasn't for the Council. It was for her. The structure hummed with renewed energy as Alara and her team mapped its depths. 3 days of exploration revealed layers upon layers of ancient machinery, dormant weapons, and data archives containing the entire history of the Foundation. The scale was impossible to comprehend. Entire continents' worth of infrastructure compressed into a single vessel. Sentinel guided them through the corridors, answering questions with clinical precision. The Foundation's original mission had been to cultivate intelligence across the galaxy, to create a community of minds that could eventually join them in understanding the universe's deepest mysteries. But the experiment failed. The seeded species evolved with too much aggression, too much fear. They turned on each other, on their creators, on everything they didn't understand. So the Foundation sealed themselves away, leaving behind a single instruction: wait for a species that remembered them, not through worship but through instinct, a species that looked at the stars and felt the pull of home. Humans were that species. "This is a bad idea," Lieutenant Park whispered as they descended into the primary command center. "We don't know what we're waking up. What if the Foundation isn't friendly?" Alara shook her head. "They made sure we could find them. They left the keys. They left the codes. If they wanted to hurt us, they could have done it before we evolved." She pressed her hand to a final console, and the command center came alive. Wall screens displayed images of Earth, ancient Earth, before the ice ages, before the great extinctions. Cities of crystal and light sprawled across continents that no longer existed. Starships rose and fell from spaceports that had been ground to dust millions of years ago. "Projection complete," Sentinel announced. "Inheritance protocols initiated. Foundation fleet activation beginning." Alara felt the deck tremble beneath her feet. Deep in the structure's core, engines were coming online. Power conduits glowed with blue-white energy. "How long until the fleet is operational?" she asked. 72 cycles, Sentinel replied. "The fleet has been dormant for 4.7 million years. Full reactivation will take time." Alara nodded. "We don't have time. The Council knows we're here. They'll have scouts approaching the exclusion zone within cycles." "Then you must make a choice," Sentinel said. "The fleet can defend you. It can reclaim your territories. It can even punish those who exiled you. But once activated, its primary directive is to protect the Foundation's legacy, which means protecting the descendants of the original colony. You." Alara's crew exchanged glances. The weight of Sentinel's words pressed down on them. "What exactly does that mean?" Park asked. Sentinel's holographic form expanded, projecting images of the fleet's armaments. "It means that the Council's existence is now conditional on your approval. The Foundation's original mistake was creating races without oversight. We will not make that mistake again." Alara turned away from the displays, her mind racing. She had come here to find sanctuary, to save her people. Now she was being offered something else entirely: power over the very civilization that had rejected them. And she was terrified of what she might do with it. Outside the structure, the Exodus fleet watched in awe as massive warships began emerging from dimensional folds. Each one was larger than anything the Council had ever built, their hulls covered in shielding that could withstand supernovas, their weapons capable of extinguishing stars. Captain Harlan of the Salvation sent a priority message to Alara's shuttle. "Commander, we're reading multiple energy signatures. Is that ours?" Alara's voice came through the speakers, steady but strained. "It's ours, Captain. It was always ours. We just forgot." The Exodus fleet erupted in celebration. Families hugged in corridors. Soldiers wept with relief. The Council had exiled them, but their ancestors had provided a home, a fortress capable of repelling any attack. But Alara didn't celebrate. She stood alone on the observation deck of the command center, staring at the fleet of ancient warships assembling in the void. Sentinel appeared beside her. "You are conflicted." Alara laughed bitterly. "I just found out my ancestors created most of the intelligent life in the galaxy, and then abandoned them when they turned out to be violent. And now I'm supposed to decide what happens to those same species." "You are the inheritor," Sentinel said. "The decision is yours, but I must warn you, the Council will not accept your existence. They will see your fleet as a threat. They will attack. Then we'll defend ourselves." She turned to face the hologram. "But I won't be like them. I won't conquer. I won't enslave. I'll give them a chance." Sentinel's holographic eyes seemed to soften. "That is what the Foundation hoped to hear. That is why we chose you." "What do you mean, chose me?" The genetic markers we embedded in the human genome were designed to activate in response to specific environmental pressures. The exile was one of those pressures, but the final activation required something else: wisdom, a willingness to use power with restraint. Ilara stared at the hologram. So this was all a test. Life is a test, Sentinel replied. Every choice you make defines who you are, and who you are will define the future of this galaxy. The display screens shifted again, showing the Council's core worlds, bright, prosperous, teeming with billions of beings who had never known fear. Until now. 70 cycles passed faster than Ilara anticipated. The Foundation fleet came online one ship at a time, first the command vessels, then the dreadnoughts, then the support craft. By the end of the third cycle, she had a fleet of 6,000 warships at her disposal, each one capable of annihilating a planetary system. She didn't want them, she didn't ask for them, but she couldn't give them back. The Exodus fleet had been absorbed into the Foundation structure, their ships refueled and repaired, their crews given access to technology that exceeded their wildest dreams. The 5 million survivors of Earth's exile now lived in comfort, their rations replaced by synthesized food, their cramped quarters replaced by spacious habitats. But Ilara couldn't sleep. Every night she walked the command center's corridors, staring at the holographic displays that showed the galaxy's power dynamics. The Council had noticed the activation. They had deployed scouts to the exclusion zone. They had seen the warships emerging from dimensional folds. And they were terrified. "They're mobilizing their armada," Park reported one morning, his voice tight with tension. "The Council's combined fleet is assembling at the core. Thousands of ships, millions of personnel. They're planning an attack." Ilara nodded. She had expected this. The Council wouldn't simply accept the emergence of a rival power. They would fight. They would destroy. They would do whatever it took to maintain their supremacy. "Send a transmission," she ordered. "Broadcast on all Council frequencies. Tell them we're not here to fight. Tell them we want to negotiate." Park hesitated. "Commander, they tried to kill us. They exiled us to die in the void. They don't deserve." "I know what they deserve." Ilara's voice was sharp, cutting through his protest. "But I'm not going to start a war just because they started one first. We're going to be better than them. That's the point." The transmission went out. For 3 cycles there was no response. Then, on the 4th cycle, a single Council vessel entered the exclusion zone, broadcasting a request for parley. Ilara met the Council envoy in a neutral chamber aboard the Foundation command ship. The envoy was a Cirith, tall and segmented-eyed, dressed in formal diplomatic robes. His name was Korath, and he radiated barely suppressed terror. "Commander Vance," he began, his harmonic voice strained, "I am authorized to deliver a message from the Council." "I'm listening." "The Council acknowledges your claim to this region of space. We are willing to recognize your sovereignty over the exile zone. In exchange, you must deactivate your fleet and return to your original exile." Ilara held up a hand, cutting him off. "You're not in a position to make demands, Korath. You're in a position to accept terms." Korath's segmented eyes widened. "Terms you dare." "The Foundation is older than your civilization. Their technology is superior to anything you've ever seen, and they chose us to inherit it. We could destroy your armada. We could conquer your worlds. We could wipe out every species that voted to exile us." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But we won't, because that's not who we are, that's not who we want to be." Korath stared at her, his fear shifting into confusion. "Then what do you want?" Ilara leaned forward. "I want your Council to admit what they did. I want them to acknowledge that humanity was never a threat. I want them to rescind the exile and recognize Earth as a sovereign power. And I want them to start treating other species with the same dignity they demand for themselves." "That's impossible," Korath hissed. "The Council will never." Then the council will be dissolved. Ilara's voice was ice. I'm not asking for permission. I'm giving you a choice. The envoy left in silence, his vessel retreating back toward the core. Ilara watched him go, knowing she had just declared war in everything but name. Sentinel appeared beside her. You handled that well. I handled it like a fool. He's going to report back that we're weak, that we're afraid to use our power. Perhaps, Sentinel agreed. Or perhaps he will report that you are restrained, that you are willing to negotiate, that you are not the warmongers they expected. Ilara shook her head. It doesn't matter what he reports. The council is going to attack anyway. They can't accept that a species they tried to destroy now has the power to destroy them. Then we will defend ourselves, Sentinel said. And when the battle is over, we will show them mercy. That is the Foundation's way. Ilara turned away from the viewport. The Foundation's way got them sealed in a pocket dimension for millions of years. Maybe we need a different way. The council convened in emergency session, their gleaming chamber now filled with fear instead of arrogance. The human fleet's emergence had shattered their assumptions about the galaxy. They had believed themselves supreme. Now they were prey. Valthar presided over the session, his staff trembling in his grip. The humans have revealed themselves to be the descendants of the architects, he announced. They possess weapons we cannot match. They control a fleet that could extinguish our entire civilization. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other, their translators struggling to keep up with overlapping languages. How could we have missed this? A Quarren delegate demanded. How could a species so primitive hide such origins? They didn't hide, Valthar replied. They simply didn't know. The architects, the humans, left their descendants to evolve naturally. They gave us the seeds of intelligence, and then they abandoned us. The chamber fell silent. Abandoned, a Tarkin delegate whispered. You mean they created us? Everything we are, everything we've built, it was given to us. We didn't earn our intelligence. We didn't evolve. We were engineered. Valthar's voice cracked. And the engineers have returned to reclaim their property. The fear that gripped the chamber was palpable. For millions of years, the Council had believed in their own supremacy. They had conquered lesser species, imposed their will on the galaxy, and justified their actions through a belief in their own superiority. Now that belief was shattered. We must fight, a Zalari delegate declared. We must destroy them before they destroy us. Fight with what? Another asked. Their ships are 1,000,000 years more advanced than ours. Their weapons can destroy planets. We would be throwing ourselves into a furnace. Valthar raised his staff, calling for order. We have one advantage. The humans are emotional. They hesitate. They feel compassion, if we can exploit that. You want to exploit compassion? The voice came from the chamber's entrance. Korath, the envoy, stood in the doorway, his segmented eyes blazing. I spoke with their commander. She offered us peace. She asked for nothing but recognition and dignity, and you're planning to betray that. She's manipulating you, Valthar snapped. Humans are masters of deception. They show weakness when they are strong, strength when they are weak. You cannot trust. I trust what I saw. Korath strode into the chamber. Their commander could have destroyed me. She could have demanded surrender. Instead, she gave us a choice. She gave us hope. The chamber fell into argument once more. Some delegates sided with Korath, urging negotiation. Others demanded war. The debate raged for hours, cycles, the fear and pride of 100 races clashing in that gleaming hall. Finally, Valthar made his decision. We will not negotiate with a species that threatens our existence. We will fight. We will show the humans that we are not weak, that we will not surrender to their power. Korath rose to object, but Valthar cut him off. Ambassador, you are relieved of your duties. The council will not be swayed by sentiment. Korath stared at the presiding officer, his segmented eyes filled with something that looked like pity. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. The humans didn't come to conquer. They came to reclaim what was always theirs. And if you force them to fight, they will win. Not because they're stronger, because they've already passed the test we keep failing. He turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the council to its delusions. Back in the exile zone, Alara received the council's declaration of war with a heavy heart. "They're mobilizing their armada," Park reported. 3,000 ships heading our way, estimated arrival in 12 cycles. Alara nodded. She had known this moment would come, but knowing it didn't make it easier. "Send a final transmission," she ordered. "Tell them we will defend ourselves, but tell them also that we will not pursue, we will not conquer, we will not destroy what we could have saved." The transmission went out. The council ignored it. Alara turned to Sentinel. "Prepare the fleet. Defensive formation only. We don't fire until they fire first." Sentinel nodded. "Understood, Commander. The Foundation's legacy will not be one of aggression." Alara watched the holographic displays shift, showing the council armada approaching. She thought of her father, standing alone in that chamber, delivering his warning. He had known this would happen. He had known the council would choose war over peace. But he had also known something else, something she was only beginning to understand. The council wasn't the enemy was fear, and fear could only be defeated by courage. "I'm ready," she whispered, "for whatever comes next." The council armada emerged from dimensional space at the edge of the exile zone, 3,000 warships arranged in perfect formation. Their commanders had studied the Foundation fleet's apparent capabilities, developed tactics to counter the ancient technology. They believed they had a chance. They were wrong. The first wave of council ships advanced toward the Foundation's outer defenses, their weapons blazing. Plasma bolts streaked across the void, particle beams lanced into the darkness, kinetic projectiles hurtled toward their targets. And they did nothing. The Foundation shields absorbed the attacks like water absorbing ripples. Not a single ship was damaged. Not a single system was compromised. "Return fire," Alara ordered. "Minimal force, target their propulsion systems only." The Foundation fleet responded with surgical precision. Energy beams lanced out, striking the Council ship's engines, disabling them without destroying them. One by one, the Council vessels went dark, their crews stranded in the void. "Enemy armada disabled," Sentinel reported. 87% neutralized, no casualties on either side. Alara nodded. "Send rescue shuttles, retrieve their crews. We'll take them prisoner, but we'll treat them with dignity." "Commander, that's not how war works," Park objected. "We need to show them." "We need to show them mercy," she cut him off. "That's the whole point. We're not the Council, we're better." The rescue shuttles launched, their crews working to extract the stranded Council personnel. The prisoners were processed and housed in comfortable quarters, their medical needs attended to, their questions answered with patience. It was the strangest battle in galactic history. Thousands of ships defeated without a single death. But the Council wasn't done. Valther, commanding from a hidden outpost, ordered a second wave, a desperation move. 1,000 ships charged the Foundation lines, their weapons set to overload, their crews ready to die. "Suicide attack," Sentinel announced. "They're going to ram us." Alara's blood ran cold. "Deploy interceptor drones, disable their ships before they reach us, save every crew you can." The drones swarmed out, their precision beams targeting propulsion systems, guidance arrays, life support. The Council ships veered off course, their crews struggling to maintain control. Most were disabled. Some were destroyed by their own overloaded weapons. But a few made it through. The Foundation flagship shuddered as a Council vessel slammed into its shields, the impact causing a cascading failure across multiple systems. Alara was thrown from her feet, her vision swimming as emergency klaxons blared. "We've lost primary shields," Sentinel reported. secondary barriers holding, but the damage is extensive. Ilara pushed herself upright. Status of the enemy crew: 800 casualties. Their vessel was destroyed on impact. We're attempting to recover survivors. The battle continued for hours, the Council throwing everything they had at the Foundation fleet. And every time, Ilara responded with restraint, disabling instead of destroying, capturing instead of killing. By the time the Council's armada was defeated, Ilara had taken 10,000 prisoners. Not a single Foundation crew member had died. The Council had lost 5,000. It was the most lopsided victory in Galactic history, and it left Ilara feeling hollow. "Commander," Park approached her, his face pale. "The prisoners are demanding to speak with you. They want to know why we spared them." Ilara nodded. "Take me to them." She walked through the prisoner quarters, past the terrified Council crews, until she reached the command section. Valthar sat in a chair, his staff snapped in half, his segmented eyes dull with defeat. "Commander Vance," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "you've won. Why are we still alive?" Ilara knelt before him, meeting his gaze. "Because killing you wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't bring back the people we lost. It wouldn't undo the exile. It would just make us as cruel as you." Valthar stared at her, his fear slowly shifting into confusion. "Then what do you want from us?" She stood, looking down at the defeated leader. "I want you to understand what you did wrong. I want you to admit that your fear of us was unjustified, and I want you to promise that you'll do better." "And if we refuse?" Ilara's expression hardened. "Then we'll keep you here until you change your mind. We have time, we have patience, and we have hope." She turned to leave, pausing at the door. "You said we were dangerous, Valthar. You said we couldn't be trusted, but look at what we did. We defeated you without destroying you. We showed mercy when we could have shown cruelty. That's not danger, that's strength." She walked out, leaving the defeated leader to his thoughts. 3 cycles passed. The prisoners remained in their quarters, their conditions comfortable, their questions answered. Ilara visited them daily, listening to their fears, their anger, their slowly dawning realization that they had been wrong. "You understand now, don't you?" she asked Valthar on the 15th day. "You understand that we never wanted to conquer you." Valthar nodded slowly. "We were so afraid of your potential that we blinded ourselves to your nature. You are not the monsters we imagined. You are something worse." Ilara raised an eyebrow. "Worse?" "You are what we could have been." He looked up at her, his segmented eyes glistening. "You are what we should have been, and that makes us feel ashamed." Ilara sat down beside him. "Shame is a good start, but it's not enough. We need you to do more than feel ashamed. We need you to change." "How?" he asked. "How do we change millennia of fear and distrust?" "One step at a time." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Start by recognizing us as equals, not as threats, not as gods, not as monsters, just as people. We have flaws, we make mistakes, but we also have hope, and we're willing to share that hope with you." Valthar stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "Then show me," he said. "Show me how to hope." The Council's core worlds watched the battle's aftermath with disbelief. The humans had won, not by overwhelming force, but by restraint. They had captured the Council's armada, taken its leaders prisoner, and then offered peace. It was unprecedented, it was impossible, and it changed everything. Calls for negotiation began flooding the Council's communication channels. Delegates who had voted for war now begged for peace. Species who had supported the exile now demanded reconciliation. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone wanted to be on the winning side. Ilara received the transmissions with cautious optimism. "They're not doing this because they've changed their minds," she told Park. "They're doing it because they're afraid, and fear isn't the same as respect." "Then what do?" he asked. "We give them time, we give them space. We let them come to us when they're ready." She turned to the holographic display. watching the Council's frenzied negotiations. And when they do come, we'll be ready. Korath arrived at the Exile Zone 3 cycles later, representing a coalition of Council species who had rejected Valther's war. He brought with him a proposal: full recognition of Earth as a sovereign power, rescission of the exile, and a permanent seat on the Council. "The other delegates are ready to accept," he said, "but there are conditions." Ilara raised an eyebrow. "Conditions?" "Humanity must agree to limit its expansion, to respect the territorial boundaries of other species, to use its technology for the benefit of all, not just for itself." Ilara nodded slowly. "Reasonable conditions, we accept." Korath blinked in surprise. "Just like that?" "Just like that," she smiled. "We never wanted to conquer you, Korath. We just wanted to be treated with dignity. If that's what you're offering, we'll take it." The peace treaty was signed in the same chamber where Kalen Vance had delivered his warning. This time the atmosphere was different. No fear, no hatred, just cautious hope. As Ilara signed the document, she felt her father's presence beside her. "We did it," she whispered. "We proved them wrong." But the celebration was short-lived. That evening, Sentinel appeared in her quarters with grave news. "Commander, the Council has not been honest with us. They've been hiding something." "What?" Ilara asked, her heart sinking. "While we were negotiating, they activated a weapon stolen from Foundation ruins millennia ago. They don't understand it. They can't control it, but they're trying to use it against us." Ilara's blood ran cold. "What kind of weapon?" "A dimensional destabilizer," Sentinel replied. "If it detonates, it will collapse the galactic core into a singularity. Everything within 1,000 light-years will be destroyed." "Why would they do that?" "Because they believe we're going to destroy them anyway. They'd rather die fighting than surrender." Ilara stood, her fists clenched. "Where's the weapon?" "Deep in the core, protected by the remnants of their armada. They've sealed themselves inside." Ilara turned to the display, staring at the Council's core worlds. Billions of beings were about to die, not because they deserved it, but because their leaders were desperate. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered. "We're going to save them." "Commander, that's insane," Park objected. "They tried to kill us. They're trying to kill themselves. We should let them." "We're not the Council," she cut him off. "We're better than that. Now prepare the fleet." The Foundation fleet jumped into the core system at maximum velocity, their shields blazing as they descended toward the Council's hidden installation. The weapon was already active, its energy signature spiking as it approached critical mass. "We have 12 minutes before detonation," Sentinel announced. 11 if they continue accelerating the process. Ilara turned to her tactical officer. "Can we disable it?" "The installation is heavily shielded," Park replied. "Even our weapons won't penetrate in time, but if we get a team inside, we might be able to shut it down manually." "Then that's what we're doing." She stood from her command chair. "I'll lead the team myself." "Commander, that's suicide." "If it saves billions of lives, it's worth it." She grabbed a field kit and moved toward the shuttle bay. "You have the bridge, Park. If we don't make it, continue the evacuation. Save as many as you can." The shuttle descended through the installation's defenses, its shields straining against the energy pulses that hammered them from every direction. Ilara gripped her weapon, her heart pounding in her chest. 7 minutes, Sentinel announced. "We'll make it," she whispered. "We have to." The shuttle breached the installation's outer shell, crashing into a hangar bay. Ilara and her team emerged, moving through corridors filled with Council soldiers who scattered at their approach. "You can't stop it," a technician screamed. "It's already too late." Ilara ignored him, pushing toward the central chamber. The weapon's core pulsed with unstable energy, its surface cracking, its power systems melting down. 5 minutes, Sentinel said. Ilara reached the control console, her fingers flying across the interface. She had seen these schematics before. She knew how to shut it down. The problem was time. "I need someone to anchor the power conduits," she shouted to her team. "If we can shunt the energy, we can stabilize it long enough to deactivate." 2 soldiers volunteered, moving to the conduits with practiced efficiency. Ilara worked the console, her hands trembling. 3 minutes. "I've got it," she whispered. "I've got it." The core buckled, sending a shockwave through the chamber. Ilara was thrown against the wall, her vision swimming, her ears ringing. 2 minutes. "Commander, you need to evacuate." "Not yet." She pushed herself upright, returning to the console. "I can do this." Her fingers found the sequence. She typed the final command and the core began to stabilize. The energy pulses subsided. The cracking stopped. "Stabilization confirmed," Sentinel announced. "The weapon is deactivated, threats neutralized." Ilara collapsed against the console, her heart racing. "Did we save them?" Sentinel paused. "Yes, Commander, you saved them." The evacuation teams began extracting the Council personnel, ferrying them to ships that would take them to safety. The core system was saved, its planets intact, its billions of inhabitants alive. Valther approached Ilara as she returned to the command ship. His segmented eyes were filled with something she hadn't seen before. "Respect. You saved us," he said. "After everything we did, you saved us." Ilara nodded. "That's what we do, we save people, even when they don't deserve it." Valther bowed his head. "Then teach us to be like you." The aftermath of the crisis reshaped the galaxy. The Council dissolved its old structures, replacing them with a new governing body that included representatives from every species, regardless of their technological level. Humanity took its place among the great powers, not as conquerors, but as partners. Ilara stood on the observation deck of the Foundation flagship, watching the stars stream past. The exile was over. The war was over, and she had finally fulfilled her father's legacy. "You did well," a familiar voice said. She turned to find Kalen Vance standing beside her, his holographic form shimmering in the light. "Father," she whispered, "you're still here." "Sentinel preserved a copy of my consciousness," he explained. "They wanted me to see what you would become." Ilara reached out, her hand passing through his form. "I didn't know if I could do it. I was so afraid." He smiled, a warm, genuine smile. "Fear is what makes us human, but courage is what makes us worthy. And you, Ilara, have more courage than anyone I've ever known." The holographic form began to fade. "I'm proud of you. Always remember that."